California. Thank you for all for being here today for the California Poor People's Campaign Inland Empire presents COVID-19 awareness webinar. But before we actually get started with our program, I want to just take a minute for us to ground ourselves, and for some of you that actually are with us for the first time, I want you to know who we are. We are the Poor People's Campaign. And Jim, can you please play the video to kind of give folks an idea of who we are and why we're here?
Is that right now?
Yes.
Next, an effort to revive a famous movement of the 1960s focused on reducing poverty, inequality, and tackling social justice. But with such a broad agenda, will it find enough support at this polarized time? We start with a look at the campaign that began 50 years ago. Shortly before his death in 1968, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. expanded his civil rights campaign to include calls for economic justice. He called for an economic revolution that included protection and services for the poorest Americans. He would call it the Poor People's Campaign.
We are coming to get our check.
The campaign would bring together poor people from across the country and from across racial, ethnic, and geographic lines, including poor whites, for a march on Washington.
Even if you have to bring a whole family, we are going to have in Washington facilities, and we're going to have food, and we are going to demand that the government do something about these conditions.
The first step was to construct a shanty town called Resurrection City on the National Mall, housing thousands of participants in a form of nonviolent civil disobedience. Dr. King himself would never make it to the March on Washington. He died that spring. But weeks after his assassination, 50,000 people gathered in solidarity, demanding economic reform on the steps where Dr. King had professed, "I have a dream."
We come with an appeal to open the doors of America to the almost 50 million Americans who have not been given a fair share of America's wealth and opportunity.
Half a century later, a group of religious and moral leaders are planning a wave of civil disobedience in Washington, a revival of the Poor People's Campaign. It is headed in part by the Reverend William Barber, who's the co-chair of the campaign. He led demonstrators at a rally in front of the U.S. Capitol this month, and he was arrested, alongside the Reverend Jesse Jackson, a key figure in the 1968 movement. I spoke with Reverend Barber recently when he was in Washington. Reverend William Barber, welcome to the NewsHour. Thank you very much for joining us. When the original Poor People's Campaign took place, it was 50 years ago. Dr. Martin Luther King was involved. After he was assassinated, it continued. But what is the connection between then and now?
Well, thank you so much for having us. And on behalf of the campaign, the National Poor People's Campaign, National Call for Moral Revival, and my co-chair, Reverend Dr. Liz Theo Harris, let me say that the connection was, first of all, that it did continue, that people realized Dr. King was right. Racism, poverty, and militarism were interconnected. The connection today is we did a study, we commissioned a study with the Institute for Policy Studies and also had some help with Urban Institute, anecdotal and empirical data. And we did something called the Souls of Poor Folk, auditing America 50 years after the Poor People's Campaign. What did we find? Today, there are 140 million poor and low wealth people. Today, there are 250,000 people that die every year from low wealth. We have less voting rights today because of the gutting of the Voting Rights Act than we had in 1965. We have 62 million people who are working poor, who work for less than a living wage, and 14 million children who are in poverty.
Those numbers are overwhelming. They are daunting. You're not proposing to do away with poverty, are you?
We are saying that there are 5 interlocking injustices that America has to face because they continue to cause policy violence. That is systemic racism, particularly seen through the lens of voter suppression, where people use voter suppression to get elected, and then once they get elected, they pass policies that hurt the poor, mostly white women, children, and the working poor. Systemic systemic poverty, ecological devastation, the war economy and militarism, and the false moral narrative of religious nationalism that says you don't have to address those issues. We are saying, yes, America is going to have to face these 5 interlocking injustices and change them.
Why can't you work through the existing political system, work to elect political figures who agree with your agenda?
Well, several reasons. Number one, we had 26 presidential debates in the last presidential election. On the Democrat and Republican side, not 1 hour was spent on poverty. Not 1 hour was spent on voter suppression and restoring the Voting Rights Act. Not 1 hour on the war economy and militarism. So if we're not even having the conversation, the first thing we have to change is the attention violence. We have an attention violence when it comes to poverty and the poor, and we must change that before you can change the agenda. And it must be a movement of the people from the bottom up.
Reverend Barber, I talk to people, I've read folks who agree with much of what you are saying you want, but they also are saying you're asking for too many different things, that you should narrow your list of ambitions, that you'll have a much better chance at getting something done.
Well, then those same people should say narrow the Constitution, because it's pretty ambitious. It says domestic tranquility, establishment of justice, providing for the common defense, promoting the welfare, general welfare. Narrow the moral call of the Bible that says you're supposed to care for the stranger, the hungry, the sick, the left out, the lonely, the imprisoned. Why is it that that wealthy and greed gets to ask for everything? They want tax cuts, they get that. They want to block health care, they get that. But then we tell poor people, you have to ask for one thing. 37 million people without health care, we have to fight for health care. Millions of people without living wages. We can't just ask for one thing, because they are systemically interlocking injustices.
If there are so many who you define as poor in this country, why aren't we seeing more people rise up and make this argument? I mean, it's right now it's left to you and a relatively small group of people who are making this argument, having the march, having your demonstrations and so forth.
Well, I don't know if I would say a relatively small group. We have organizing committees in 40 states. We have people who are organizing. In the last 2 weeks, we've had thousands of people attend. Over nearly 2,000 people do civil disobedience, more than ever in the history of this country, simultaneously doing nonviolent moral fusion, civil disobedience. There is a rising, and why? And so what we're doing is we're launching a movement. We're not ending a movement. We're launching a movement and calling people to action. Many people do not know how bad it is, and many people who are poor and low wealth have been broken and pushed down and ignored. But where we're going from West Virginia to Wisconsin, from Alabama to Alaska, we're finding that there are thousands of people who are saying it's time for us to stand up and refuse to be silent.
You've said that the nation's problem is not that we don't have enough money. You said it's that we don't have the moral capacity to face what ails society. What did you mean by that?
That when you look at our deepest moral framework of the Constitution and our deepest moral values of our religious tradition, we too often have a political conversation that talks about left versus right, military or middle class. That's too puny, it's too narrow. 43.5% of this country is poor and low wealth. People are dying. Even Joseph Stiglitz, the economist, said that America has to face the cost of inequality. What I'm saying is we can't just have a left-right argument anymore. We need to have a deeply moral argument that says this is not just about Democrats or Republicans. This is about America. What kind of democracy do we want to be? You cannot have a democracy continue to exist when 400 people make an average of $97,000 an hour and you lock people up who simply want 15 in the union.
Does either political party come closer to your goals?
Well, I think they can. I think they hit at it. I think, of course, the extremists who have taken over the Republican Party have just gone so far extreme. You know, they're more focused on tax cuts to the wealthy. They want to blame poor people for their problems. Democrats, on the other hand, are willing to talk about, say, the Affordable Care Act and talk about the middle class. But the reality is neither party is willing to put right in front of America the issues of systemic racism, systemic poverty, ecological devastation, the war economy, and say the word poverty. It's almost as though we've tried to remove even saying the word poverty, when in fact the majority of the poor people in this country are white, women, children, working people, and the disabled. So we have to change our narrative in this country. And the only way you can change the narrative is to change the narrator. That's why this campaign is focused on three things: breaking through the narrative, massive voter mobilization among the poor, and power building from the bottom up.
Reverend William Barber, the co-chair of the Poor People's Campaign in 2018. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim, for that. So this is who we are. And the reason we are here today is because we do see that at the bottom, all of us were affected by COVID. All of us, in one way or another, probably, had a decent job, that you were able to provide for yourself. And if COVID hit your family, you actually fell into needing those services that you probably never thought you would ever use: unemployment, food stamps, and the list goes on of all of those services that probably for years or maybe in your life, you would have never thought that you would need. So this is why we're here today. We're here to talk about the COVID situation in our communities. And we're here to get valuable information. We're here to hear from our youth. That is the last group of folks that need to get vaccinated so that they can survive this COVID. And we also have a speaker in regards to, it's not just about the vaccine anymore. It's also about making sure we get tested. So with that, let me go ahead and get started with our first speaker. Our first speaker will give us, a short history on why minorities fear the government when it comes to vaccines. So I am happy to introduce to you the second vice president, and also we call him our Inland Empire Poor People's Campaign historian, Ted Burnett.
Good morning. Can everybody hear me clear? Everybody hear me? Good. I'm just going to talk about a historical perspective of where we've been, where we are now, and how we can use education instead of fear. And our government and big businesses have a lot of good angels and a lot of bad demons when it comes to medical research. They have used good intentions, and because of greed and ignorance, have turned it into bad results. Let's use history, for example, to understand how this started. During slavery, the government performed surgery on Black women. The man considered the father of modern gynecology, J. Marion Sims, conducted numerous experiments on female slaves between 1845 and 1849. These women were afflicted with vesico-vaginal fistulas, a tear between the vaginal line and the bladder. They performed these operations without anesthesia. And these operations were not conducted on white women who had the same problem. Let's take another famous one in history where distrust caused a generation to not trust the government. Let's talk about the Tuskegee syphilis program. In 1932 to 1972, they denied treatment to 399 Black males who had syphilis. Even after penicillin emerged as an effective treatment in 1947, they told these men that they had bad blood and not syphilis. They were denied treatment or given a placebo By the end of the study, only 74 patients were alive. 28 died from syphilis, 100 died from complications related to syphilis, and 19 children from their offspring were born with syphilis. Then, in a normal inherent structural systemic racism, the government sponsored the same syphilis study in Guatemala, with over 1,500 prisoners, servicemen, prostitutes, and mental patients were given syphilis. This was run by John Charles Cutler, who also helped in the Tuskegee program. Sound familiar? We can even go into eugenics with forced sterilization of Black, whites, poor people, Latinos, and Americans between 1909 and 1979 by California, the state of California. They used prison hospitals, state hospitals, and mental hospitals to sterilize patients. But last but not least, we can talk about the story of a Black woman, Henrietta Lacks, and the use of her cervical cancer cells without her or her family's permission. She died in 1951. Her cells were a sort of HeLa cell line, which was the first immortalized human cell lines used in medical research. It was stolen from her when she died in Johns Hopkins University. And George Otto Gay, who was the doctor, stole it. And they used her cell in all research. Even Jonas Salk, who of polio vaccine fame in 1954, used her cancer cells. And as of today, her cancer cells are used in US and Europe as we speak, but without any compensation for her family. Although these true stories are nightmarish and grim, our government and doctors has helped vaccinate and provide medical advances for everyone. Let's give an example of Dr. Charles Drew, a Black man who invented blood plasma during World War II. And with him, millions of lives were saved, and we wouldn't have our modern day blood banks today. Let's look at the rates of vaccination in minority communities that had helped children overcome rubella, diphtheria, smallpox, polio, whooping cough, and measles. The Centers for Disease Control estimated that 732,000 American children were saved from death, and 322 million cases of childhood illnesses were prevented between 1994 and 2014 due to vaccinations. My point is, history doesn't repeat itself. People repeat history. And the moral of this story is, all people are not bad apples, and all vaccines are not bad. But if you educate yourself and do your research, you will not let fear determine if you should live or die or suffer without the COVID vaccine. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted, for that moment of education for us. And really, thank you for all of that information that some of us probably didn't even know. But from there, also, we want to hear from our youth. We want to hear from our ambassadors. And for that, I am pleased to introduce our first Laverne University ambassador that is going to not only talk about him being an ambassador, but also him being as a young adult, give us some information and hopefully talk to our youth out there that are probably not sure if this is something that they need to do. So with that, Siobhan Johnson. Can you unmute yourself, please?
Yes, it's Jackson.
Sorry, Jackson.
No, you're good. Yeah. So about the vaccine, honestly, to be quite frank, I was very afraid of the vaccine at first because it was really scary to think about the fact that this vaccine could hold my entire life, and not just my life, but like the people that I love's lives as well, whether I take it or other people take it. Just the whole dynamic that it carries was scary. And to know that I wasn't sure, but not only I wasn't sure, my mother wasn't sure, all the adults that I usually look to for guidance wasn't sure. And it was just terrifying. And to the fact that the vaccine came out so soon, it seemed like a Hail Mary of modern technology. And when I say Hail Mary, I mean it seemed like a really quick way, or really how to word this, a really strong viewpoint of trying to get something out to combat the terrible thing that is COVID-19. So when I came across the vaccine, I was terrified. But eventually I did start to ask more questions, because I feel like as someone who's a person of color, especially being an African-American male, I had so much trauma that was attached to not only my skin color, but also attached to my family dynamic and what they went through with the government and not trusting medicine. And not only that, but also my family's ignorance and what it means to be medicine, because I didn't know any doctors personally in my family. So I didn't know all the statistics. And those statistics actually do help, and they actually do quell a lot of fears that you will come across with the vaccine. So being a vaccine ambassador, I learned more about the sciences, more about how it's made, the processes, and it stopped the main thing that COVID-19 really had, and that was fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of not being able to go to the store, fear of this being the new normal. It was scary to think that this was going to be our lives for an undetermined amount of time. And it made me afraid. And that was something that I hated. I hated being afraid, because as an African American person in America, you're taught to be afraid. You're taught to be scared of not only the threat that you may pose, but the threat that people pose to you. And at that point, I got sick of being afraid. I got sick of being scared of what might happen to me if I don't take the vaccine, or what might happen to me if I do take the vaccine. So I decided to dig into it. I decided to do research. I decided to process it for myself. And I decided to make my own decisions, not based on the traumas of my past, but those were important, but to really get rid of that fear, because I didn't want fear to hold me back from enjoying my life or protecting those who were close to me. And that's what really pushed me to become a vaccine ambassador, because I really wanted to help people face those fears and to understand that those fears are valid, but that it doesn't stop there. Honestly, if I could say anything to the people that are my age bracket and may come across the same things, it's that this is a perfect time to do it, right? You may think the vaccine isn't important. You may think that the vaccine is just you making yourself safe. It's bigger than you. When you take the vaccine, you're not just taking it for yourself. You're taking it for your friend. You're taking it for your grandparents. You're taking it for people who can't even access it, right? It's a collaborative effort. And the main issue that we have in the world at this current point in time is that everybody is so selfish. Everybody looks out for themselves. Well, with COVID, you can't just look out for yourself, because you can't isolate yourself from the world 24/7. You have to eventually go out and interact with people if you want to live, at least to live a quality life. And that's where the choice comes in, to either take the vaccine to improve that quality and protect not only yourself, but other people, but to also help your community quell their own fears and their own discussions with the vaccine. And I encourage you and I implore you to really have those discussions with your grandparents who may not be as knowledgeable about the vaccine, whether it comes down to the sciences, how it's made, how it's processed, everything from Pfizer to Moderna to Johnson and Johnson, and everything in between. What's the differences? All those questions are very important. And I encourage people to ask those type of questions, because I don't want you to take something that you know nothing about, but I want you to be able to really push to learn about it and really make that a point for yourself, because it's important to get that self motivation.
Mr. Jackson, you did a fabulous job. And really quick, before I go into my next guest, my speaker, can we have the honor of having you put on your camera right before I go to my next speaker?
Yes, ma'am, my bad.
Thank you. Thank you. I wanted to personally see you and say thank you very much for that, for speaking to our young adults and to speaking your mind. Thank you very much. Your words were very valuable. And with that, I have our second Laverne University ambassador. Can I have Stephanie Castro get off mute and provide us some words also?
Yes, hello, my name is Stephanie, and I am the second COVID vaccine ambassador at the University of Laverne. And just going off of Siobhan, I too was hesitant about the COVID vaccine because of the little information that I knew, and then of the loads of misinformation I actually acquired. So before becoming an ambassador, I followed along with the reports of the vaccine mainly through social media. So all of my knowledge came from Twitter, Instagram, and even TikTok. So through these platforms, I heard a lot of how the vaccine is unreliable since the vaccine was developed in such a short amount of time. So what I believed is that researchers simply expedited the process of creating the vaccine in order to put something out instead of actually ensuring it was safe and effective. As I previously mentioned, though, most of my information came from social media, which I learned that is definitely not a reliable source. So after doing my own research, I learned that yes, the vaccine was made rapidly, but what people fail to realize is that the COVID virus is similar to the SARS, the severe acute respiratory syndrome, and Middle Eastern respiratory syndrome virus. So researchers did not have to start from scratch in making a vaccine. They were able to build on what they already had on hand, essentially having a head start. Another thing I learned was that what typically slows down the development of a vaccine is the amount of enrollment the vaccine trials have. But for COVID, thankfully, we had a lot of people's interest, so volunteers filled up trials quickly. This is what sped up the process. There was also a lot of diversity among the vaccine testing that helped access safety and effectiveness among an array of people. Unlike other vaccines, the COVID vaccine also had had an abundant amount of funding. It was estimated that the Biomedical Research and Development Authority spent $19.3 billion on the vaccine development alone. The government had also spent more than $90 million supporting the non-clinical studies that researchers supporting non-clinical studies and research in order to accelerate clinical trials on vaccines showcasing the most potential, which at the time is Johnson & Johnson and Moderna. So although it seems that the corners were cut in the process of the vaccine, they indeed went through all the required stages of clinical trials. Extensive testing and monitoring have shown that three vaccines are safe and effective, which are the Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, and Pfizer. Thus, they were given emergency use authorization by the US Food and Drug Administration. So I highly recommend the vaccine because I also, doing my research, I saw that the mRNA vaccine reduces your risk of COVID and other illnesses that come from it by 90%, which is a good amount for just being fully vaccinated. So like Siobhan said, the vaccine is our ticket to a normal life again. if you have any hesitancy, I would just suggest doing your research, because that's what helped me a lot. And to not rely on social media, because a lot of people just look at the bad side instead of looking at the benefits from it. And yeah, thank you.
Stephanie, again, thank you very much for your words of wisdom for our young adults. And I know that everyone here has found value in what you and Mr. Jackson have shared. And we will definitely be passing on the information. And you provided us with a lot of research that even I myself did not even know. So thank you very much. You've answered some of the questions that they were in my mind, but I didn't know the answer. So thank you for taking that role of the COVID ambassador. Both you and Mr. Jackson have definitely done a phenomenal job here, and we definitely appreciate you being here and helping us in this with sharing the information into our communities and for our young adults. So thank you very much. Applaud both of you. But with that, now we are going to go into Poor People's Campaign is about our community. It's about bringing your information to you and to help you as best as we can. And one of the things that we have done here is one of our groups, one of our teams have actually created a COVID-19 resource portal that will provide anybody that has COVID with certain resources that at the time you might not know you have an opportunity to use. I am actually honored and pleased to present one of our coordinating committee members that was going to share what that portal is and some information of how to use it and what's on there. So with that, Jim, can you take it away?
Thanks, Rose. Hi, my name is Jim Pugh. As Rose said, I'm on the committee for the California People's Campaign. I live up in open lowland. And as Rose said, one of our projects this year has been creating this online, what we're calling a portal, which really aims to be one place you can go to get support during COVID. A big part of it is being able to find with vaccines, but so other forms of support. We know people are struggling in a lot of different ways. So I'm going to share my screen to show you what I'm talking about. So the website is getcovidresources.org. And if you go there, you basically have a list of things that you can get access to. If you've lost work and you need unemployment assistance, you can do that through here. There's the newly expanded tax credits that was created through the most recent stimulus that Congress passed, so that families with children now be getting monthly payments starting immediately throughout the remainder of the pandemic. That can be as much as just $300 a month per child. Stimulus payments, if you didn't get any of your stimulus, you can find out how to do that here. Find out where you can get vaccines and also get food assistance. So this is just a simple place you can go. You can click everything you want here. And then it'll ask you where you are in the state. You can just choose your county or put in your address. And it'll provide you that information with what the program is and what you can do to get that support, the financial support through programs like the tax credit that or just being able to find a vaccine near you. So I encourage everyone to call to check this out, see if there's support that you might be able to get through here. And also please share it with your communities, that we want this to be out to as many people possible. As I said, we know people are struggling now and we're in tough times. The more people can get vaccinated, people can get that extra support, the easier it's going to be for us as a community to be able to get through this.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that, Jim. Can you throw in the website again into the chat while we go into our next speaker? And like I said, when we started, vaccines and all of the information around COVID, the resources is very important. But we also have to think about how we can be proactive. And being proactive means sometimes even if you are vaccinated, you need to check. You need to check to make sure that as you go about your day, either at work or even as simple as to the grocery store, the moment you leave your home, you don't know, and how can you know if you don't test yourself? So with that, I am happy to now introduce our next speaker, which is, he is the president and COO of Crestview Clinical Laboratory. Glad to and happy to have here Mr. Justin Nugent.
Hello everyone.
We can't hear you, Justin. But I think mute yourself. You were coming through fine.
Can you hear me if I use it? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, good. So, yes, my name is Justin. I'm glad that Mr. Jackson and Mrs. Stephanie from Laverne University have enforced the need for vaccine, and I like to continue that topic before I get to the topic of testing. Yeah, so as you know, most people don't know what the vaccine does to your body. So I like to spend 1 minute to explain that. So when the vaccine comes into our body, it actually creates a layer of protection. In our body, we have the throat, the lung, and everything have the wall. Now, the virus, when it comes in, it have to latch into our wall inside our body in order to multiply out the cell that became a bacteria and attack our body. So the vaccine, when it comes into our body, it creates a layer of enzyme, which is a thick layer of something that do not allow the virus to latch into our entire body. Because of that, it won't attack our body. So it protects you. It's just like a shield. Now, having said that, it doesn't mean that it will kill the virus in your body. The virus still will be on your body and continue to pass on to somebody else. If the same way that without vaccine, it can pass to somebody else. So because of that, we always encourage people to continue to test for two reasons. One is when you have a vaccine, you don't know that vaccine actually creates a layer for you or not. You have to go out and check the neutralizing antibody to make sure that vaccine works on your body. So I have our lab, we test people who take vaccine already, people who took Moderna, who took Pfizer, took Johnson & Johnson. We have a different number of measurement of the amount of antibody they can generate inside them. So as for the statistic, we find out that Moderna have the best effect for the people who take Moderna vaccine. Pfizer 3%, and Johnson & Johnson is very low for creating a vaccine antibody layer in your body. So if you don't know that, you think that you take vaccine and you fully protected, that is not true. So in your family, let's say you have 10 people and then 5 people take Moderna and 5 people take Pfizer. And the statistics show from the medical San Francisco, UC San Francisco Medical School, statistics show that 30% of the people who are 60 years old or older take Pfizer will not have any impact as a vaccine claim. Okay, so for that 30% of people who believe that they'll be protected, it's very dangerous for them. So if they know that they don't have the neutralizing antibody generated by that vaccine, they should take another vaccine. In order to know that, they have to take the neutralizing antibody test. Now, so with the vaccine in your body, it can still carry the virus and can still pass on to somebody else, especially nowadays. You hear a lot about the new variant. So the new variant come in, of course, you have vaccine, it may be protective, but it still pass on to somebody who do not have vaccine, or somebody who have a vaccine that does not generate antibody. So if you test and you know that you carry, even though you don't feel anything, you don't have any symptom at all, but you still can carry the virus. And then you sit down with your, what if one of your family member who have diabetes or something like that, and person do not generate antibody from vaccine that he already took, then it will be very dangerous for that family members. So I encourage everybody frequently to do things. One, if you already vaccinated, take the neutralizing antibody test to see if that vaccine for you. If the result come out is not effective, then you should ask the doctor to encourage you to take another vaccine, different vaccine, okay? And then continue to check every 3 months to see the vaccine still working or not. If it's not still, for example, let's say elderly people, they take vaccine, maybe 2 months later, they have to take vaccine again because their body can generate the same amount of neutralizing antibody like younger people does. So that is for the vaccine side. The COVID side, we have to continue to test to make sure that we don't carry the virus to pass on to somebody else. We test is not only for us, we test is for the community, and for the family member, for everybody that you care about. So even though you already have vaccine, you can still carry and pass on to somebody else. So with that, I like to close that. To me, the testing for COVID should not end, and it should be continued until one day that there's more COVID, right? So you back to the Rose.
Yes. Yes, thank you for that,
Hello?
Justin. Thank you for those words of letting us know, what's out there and how we should definitely be protecting ourselves. So, one of the main things that I take out of this is we need to be proactive. Even if, what we're being told in the media is go to the hospital if you start feeling symptoms. We need to be more proactive as a community and test ourselves and not let our symptoms get to a point that we can't breathe, that we're going to be going to the hospital now. So definitely make sure that you do find the resources that we do have. We have federal
Looks like Rose making some connection.
that
issues.
in.
There we go. Yeah.
Am I better?
Yes, you're back now, Rose.
So what I was saying is we need to make sure vaccine, we should still continue testing ourselves so that we don't end up in the hospital at a point where if we would have tested earlier, we probably would have had a better results. Just recently, I've been hearing people in 3 days, 4 days, COVID has taken family members away. And we just need to be more proactive as a community and look there. So again, thank you to all of the speakers here, but one in our last speaker and a great speaker that we have here has been very proactive with the Poor People's Campaign, has been my partner in crime, putting our events out here and really happy to bring her on and very supportive of the Poor People's Campaign in this area. So want to just bring her up, Ms. Roy.
Thank you so much, Rose. Can everyone hear me? Yes? Okay, great. Thank you, Rose. I sure do appreciate your vision to put or to host this type of a webinar. We were trying to think about how do we close with our summer internship ambassadors. And I think this was a great way. So thank you so much for this. Okay, my name is Jeanette Ellis Royston. I am the president of the NAACP, the Pomona Valley branch, and I'd like to share a little bit about the NAACP here in Pomona Valley. We are one of 36 branches in the state of California, and the NAACP serves 10 cities. So Pomona, the city of Pomona is one of 10 cities that the NAACP Pomona Valley branch serves. So we have been really trying to get the word out for a vaccine and to be vaccinated in those 10 cities. The city of Pomona have been doing an excellent job. Of course, that is where I live, so I am very partial. But the mayor of the city of Pomona has been doing a fantastic job. Tim Sandoval has created what we call is a COVID-19 action committee. And with that action committee, it has developed into 5 subcommittees. And I serve on the basic need committee, which is making sure that people basic needs are met, like food and anything else that they may need basically wide. I do see a few of NACP members on the call right now. And they've been quite active in COVID-19, getting COVID-19 vaccination to all those who are interested in the vaccine. I want to say that, and Rose have me on a time frame, so I'm going to try to stay within that time frame. I totally respect her as our secretary, and I'm learning how to abide by the rules, so I'm going to stay in the time frame. As far as the NACP and the connection of the NACP, you already heard Ted, you already heard Rose, that the NACP and the Poor People's Campaign, we actually started this journey back in 2017. And we have had Poor People's Campaign marches in the city of Pomona. And we were basically focused on systemic racism at the time, institutional systemic racism. And as the time would have it, and learning, as you heard from the 2 Laverne ambassadors, that with education not only changes your focus, but it increases your energy to want to do more. And that's where we are with the Poor People's Campaign today. As I said, we started as poor people, poverty. Well, then the pandemic hit. Well, then we know that there was a large percentage of African American and people of color who have lost their lives to COVID-19 because of no health care. So we started to focus and put our energy around making sure everybody had health care. But according to COVID-19 and the government, you heard what Ted said, that some people are just never going to have the health care that they actually need in order to live a productive life. So we're fighting an uphill battle, and the uphill battle is systemic racism or structural systemic racism. So we are trying to do what we can do, and being that Hilda Solis's office is actually pushing the idea of everyone being vaccinated in Los Angeles County, particular her 2 cities that she served here, which is Claremont and the city of Pomona. And the NACP is now taking on the resource to have the Pomona NACP Pomona Valley center to be a COVID-19 self-testing site. And I'm looking forward to launch that actually August 7th. We'll be launching that at the City of Pomona, Pomona Connect kickoff. We will be announcing that and a kickoff. So if anyone wants to be tested on a regular basis, we're going to have office hours where you'll be allowed, or it's open for you to come and be tested at the Solidarity Center at the Indian Hill. You'll get more information and more detail and as to the hours and the dates that we're going to be open for that. But right now, we already know that we will be open. We're taking it on. And that is as a result of Justin and I meeting last week and talking to Justin. I understand his mission. I appreciate his mission. And talking to him, the bottom line is prevention. And that is exactly one of my mottos and one of my qualities. If we can prevent something from happening, we need to act on that. And right now, COVID-19 self-testing would be one of those resources to prevent you from even spreading or transmitting or even getting COVID-19. So that's going to be available to you. You'll be hearing more about that. I want to really give a shout out to our two Laverne University summer ambassadors. These two young people, they were fantastic. And I just want to thank them for their words of encouragement, their words of, they actually spoke to the science. So it tells us that they did their homework, which they are students, so that's typical for them. But at least they were able to share it. So I appreciate Stephanie and Siobhan. So thank you all. And I noticed we have a few other COVID-19 ambassadors on the call. I believe I see Leah. I did see Leah one time, and I want to thank you guys for being on the call. Thank you so much. And at this time, I'm going to ask for all of the NAACP members just to either raise your hand or stand up and show off your Pomona Valley t-shirt. So, but thank you all for being on the call, and I thank you for the support, and we look forward for you to continue to support this terrible disease or pandemic we call COVID-19 and now Delta. So I appreciate all of you for being on the call. I want to just also close with some statistics coming from the Reverend William Barber. He said, it is 140 million people. That's a lot of people dead fighting COVID. 14 million children are starving in our nation. That's a lot. The commentator did ask Reverend William Barber, is there something else we can do, or do you think that you're asking for too much? Well, I wished I was there, a fly on the wall, because this is what I would have said, and I'm going to close with it. The Reverend William Barber picked up a movement that the Martin Luther King initiated originally in 1968. And these statistics that we have today for poverty, lack of insurance, economics, education, they still exist today. And the Constitution of the United States that we all are governed by, 1868, African American was given the right for citizenship and to vote in 1870. We're still struggling. So if I was a fly on the wall, when that question was asked to Reverend William Barber, I would say the issues are still a part of our lives. 50 plus years since. There have been some changes. We agree, we totally appreciate the changes, but it isn't enough. It isn't enough. So I just want to say thank you, Rose, and thank you, all who is a part of this COVID-19 awareness webinar, and we look forward to do more. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Ms. Royston, for your kind words. And, you know, there's two things that come to mind from what you just said. One of them is, you know, as I think back in my college years, and this won't be long, but think back to my college years and think back to my classes in economics, I can clearly remember supply and demand and the Reaganomics. And for the life of me, I learned it and I passed. For the life of me, I always felt something was missing. And now that I'm here and through my union, SEI, with the NAACP and the work that I do with all of the community is that I learned what's happening. I was learning how to make the rich richer, but never there did I say, Rose, this is how you and your family are gonna come up. And whenever Barbara says, we are gonna, you know, we're gonna go from the bottom up, that's the piece that economics is not showing us. That is the piece that if you are part of government, that is the piece that you're missing when you're going through college, through all of these economic, they provide us and this is how it's done. But in reality, it's that simple. If you provide the safety net for folks that are working class, the money goes back into our communities, the money into our economy. And if you do this trickle down economics, it never trickles down. It stays up there. And what happens? Have these corporations that keep the money and they just close up. And the folks are left out with. That's the part of economics that is not taught. That is our responsibility as a community to make sure that we share this with each other, make sure that that's the piece that is going to bring up this great country that we're in. The second part that I wear before we do question and answer is I really remember Reverend did say in 2016, I believe, Ted, quote me if I'm wrong, but he did say when SEIU, the NAACP, and community come together, what a day. What a day, what a day. And I can say that we are in a place right now where things for our best benefit. And we're now in an administration that is now somewhat listening, but our fight hasn't ended. Our fight continues. We are in a marathon and we need to continue this work. And at this moment, I would like to know, what I would like to do is provide you information of how you can contact us. Jim, can you provide the following links in our chat? So there's one way that you are able to connect with us. One way is you are able to donate to our cause. And Jim, if you put chat, folks can do that. You can donate us. You can also get involved. If right after that, Jim, our email, and you could also add our Facebook page. You're able to get all the latest information of what and how we're doing it. And I really urge all of you and really see what's going on, because You know, we, Reverend Barber said, we are not small. We're 40 plus wide, and we're growing. And we're growing because what the Reverend Martin Luther King started 50 years ago, we're just pushing it on. And we are going to create those changes that are needed in our country for all of us. That is the economics that we need to be a part of, that we need to teach. That is what our high schools, even our colleges are not showing. And I think on us to show that. So, and thank you very much for spending your Saturday with us. Don't leave us. We are now in the section of question and answers. We have our panelists still here. If anybody has any questions, this is the moment that you can actually start raising your hand. And Jim, can you help us out here and your hands asking some questions to our panelists? We will go ahead and go into that section as of now.
I see Ted with his hand up.
Yes, so I don't have a question, but I wanted to bring up something that a lot of people don't know about, is that when the former president, Agent Orange, Donald Trump, was in a hospital at Walter Reed Hospital, he received some doses of an experimental drug that got him healthy. And at that time, it wasn't available to everyone. But as of this year, the monoclonal antibodies therapy was available to all Americans free of charge. And the state of California received over 378,000 doses of it, but only 20% of it was used. And it's used to help you if you have COVID already, and they will give you the dose of it, and it'll help you so that you won't die and be as sick. So people need to start educating people on the monoclonal antibody therapy, which is available to all people in California and a lot of minority hospitals. Thank you.
So if folks have a question, either use the Zoom function to raise your hand, or you can just post in the chat and say to ask something.
I saw a question. I saw a couple of questions. I saw a couple of questions on the chat, and Stephanie asked you to elaborate on it. So right now, if anybody wanted, first of all, the testing for COVID is completely free to people to test it. And because if you have insurance, the insurance will pay for it. If you don't have insurance, then the government have the program that cover for all those tested who have insurance. So right now, we working closely with the Genet organization in Pomona, or any other group, then we provide the test kits to NCAACP, and they just come and get it at any event that organized by the NAACP. And the test kit, they can do self-administration, and then they just give it back, and we bring back to the lab, and then the next day you will get a result. Hello? Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
We heard you, Justin. Thank you very much for clarifying.
Appreciate it.
Else that has any questions, just go ahead and go off of mute and ask your question. Okay, so again, I don't see any questions. This segment here was for a Q&A. If there isn't
There's a question on the
Amy
chat
has
from
a
Amy.
question in the chat.
This
Amy
question-
Valdez has a question in the chat.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that. Let me see what it says. Okay, so Amy's question is, I want to be clear, was it said that Pfizer vax is not as effective for older folks, that Moderna is better? So I guess this question is for Justin.
Unmute.
Justin, you need to unmute.
Unmute, Justin. We can't hear you.
Can't hear you, Justin.
Can't hear you, brother.
This remote is our only way of communicating, and we're all learning how to navigate.
Sorry, I have been muted. So first of all,
Yes,
let me go back to the question Amy is asking. So a credible medical journal and research came out of the best university medical school is the University of California, San Francisco. And they indicated that 30% of the people who are 60 years or older who take the Pfizer vaccine will not generate any antibody for themselves. So for us as a lab, we conduct our own statistic. Many people who took the vaccine already, they came to our lab and they want to know if does the vaccine work on them or not. So we test in our form. We make sure they fill out what vaccine have they taken and the date that they taken for start. And we have a statistic that most people who Moderna have the highest neutralizing antibody, and the people who took Pfizer, in some cases, they have zero antibody. That including people in medical field like doctors. They took Pfizer, they came to us and we find out they have no antibody, so they take another vaccine. They went back and take Moderna, and they come back with antibody. So in general, basically, not all the vaccine will work for everybody because each of our body make up a different DNA. So that's why it's very important to know does vaccine work for you or not. And if it does, how strong it when it helps you. So there are qualitative analytic and there are quantitative analytic regarding the vaccine. So we test first. We say, okay, this vaccine work on you. Second, we say, okay, how strong is it? High, medium, or low? So if it's low, then you should go back and take test again every 3 months to see the vaccines work for you or not. Maybe 3 months later, you take a test again, the vaccine no longer work for you. This will be happen in most cases in every population, because the elderly population will not have the same body as a younger generation, so that they can continue to utilize antibody. So again, it's very essential. It's important to know the vaccine work you want.
Thank you, Justin, for that.
Anyone else?
So there's actually
let me check.
Yeah. Okay, so there's two questions
Eric asking,
on the chat.
He's not sure if I answer to the question, but may someone expand on someone. Okay, so let me answer you. Okay, we have people come to us and test, regardless you have vaccine or you don't have vaccine. People who against taking the vaccine, they want to check if their body have generate that same neutralizing antibody or not. If they do, they have a choice. They don't have to take vaccine, or they can take vaccine. It's up to them. Now, the people who already took vaccine, is more important for that person to take the test, because you cannot assume vaccine work for you. In many cases, many study, many data already show vaccine don't work for everybody. So you need to know which vaccine works best for you. That's why you need to take a test, even though after you take a vaccine. But make sure you understand this. The antibody test is very broad term. Before vaccine arrive, they all have this 15-minute antibody test. Those are very inaccurate and these are useless. The antibody test here is the one you have to test is neutralizing antibody test. This is a completely different antibody test. It checks your antibody specifically related to COVID antibody, not general antibody. So before vaccine, you have antibody test 15 minutes. They see the antibody or not. That is generalized antibody. An example. Let's say if you get infection in your tooth infection, okay, or you have ear infection, and you go take that 15 minutes antibody test, the result will come out positive, COVID positive. That one is completely wrong. So that's why the CDC have advised whoever took a 15-minute antibody test, if it's so negative, then they should take the next test, which is PCR test. Because the PCR test is the only test can guarantee 99.99%. If you negative from the PCR test, then it's for sure negative. If you test negative from the antibody test, it's not sure that you are negative or not. That's why they say 80% of the 15 minutes antibody test is false negative. And false negative is very dangerous to our community, right? Because they think they're negative, but they are not. That's why they keep passing on to their family member, to their community. So that's why I would not recommend the 15 minutes antibody test that in the market today. To me personally, I think this is a scam.
Thank you, Jim, for that. So we have two questions, and I see Jeanette's hand up. The question comes from Mariana. She asks if we can elaborate on, respond on the fear of undocumented people being the cause of the spread. One of our panelists that can actually speak on that.
Okay, I think claim is bogus. Yeah, undocumented or documented, they have their own life. It's not to anybody else. So the only way to spread the virus is they don't the right measure of caution or preventive. For example, wear masks or social distancing or be careful, silverware when you eat, that kind of thing, regardless if you documented or you don't document it. If you take those precautions, then you can prevent from the spreading. So I don't believe, personally, I don't believe that the undocumented people are the main spreader for the COVID. It has the same risk and same statistic in any population that do not take precaution preventive measure, then they can spread as much as the same with anybody else.
Oh, thank you, Justin, for that. The other question is, yes,
Rose, can I say something? Also,
yes.
A lot of it is structural systemic racism that has permeated over history in blaming minority groups for different things. And the Spanish flu in the 1900s during the Woodrow Wilson administration wasn't even the Spanish flu. They attached that name because the Spaniards actually were truthful about what was going on and in the treatment program. So they were scapegoating them and blaming them, just like during the 1900s when they had the outbreak in San Francisco, they blamed the Asian people. So this is nothing new, and it's camouflage and it's race baiting and everything else like that. And so this is just something that we have to educate ourselves and understand that that all of that's not true, and that we have to not repeat it even though the media does. So it finds its roots in the structural systemic racism of the United States, dog whistle politics, and race baiting.
Okay, Ted. One question that did come was, where can we get the antibodies test? And I think that Justin, you, where can this antibody test be done? Awesome, awesome. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that,
Okay.
Justin.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? So I would just type in the email address of Geno Health Group or my email address, then we can arrange that with them.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Ms. Jeanette.
Hold on a second.
Are you still Justin? Okay, I want to say, actually, Justin answered my question, I would
Yes.
believe.
So
Because
I provided the two email address. If we can organize a group of 30 people or 20 people, I can have the anonymous to go there and draw their blood, and then we lab and we can test. Right now, I think we are probably the only lab doing neutralizing antibody in Southern California.
Okay, thank you, Justin. So I have Minette and then Ted.
Can you say again?
Ms. Minette, you're on.
thank you so much. Justin actually answered part of my question, because I was going to have him explain the difference between what we are hearing in the community or in on the media, rapid testing. And as you heard Justin already, he already said that that's not, that's bunk. So I want you to know that the testing that we are going to be doing at the Pomona Valley NAACP is the PCR testing, which Justin actually spoke to. So I just want you to be aware of that it will be the PCR testing. It is not the rapid testing. And that's the term that you're hearing, rapid testing. It's bunk. We will be utilizing PCR testing. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that. Then I have Ted Burnett and then Paula.
This question is for Justin. With the mutation of the COVID virus into Delta and Lambda, they said that the efficacy rates of different vaccines, Johnson & Johnson and Pfizer, lessens and weakens after 6 months. And so they're talking about having a booster shot. I know Israel is already setting up for a booster shot. Where are we in the CDC at approving a booster shot, but permanently approving the vaccines so they're not just emergency use?
You're on mute.
I think that question was for Justin.
Thank you. Sorry, Ted. Yeah. I understand correctly that you have two parts in your question. The first part is about the efficacy of the vaccine, and the second part of the question is where are they in terms of the booster shot for defending the new variant? Correct?
Yes.
Okay. So the first part is the efficacy. For my I want to let you know that in my lab, beside COVID, we do, we are a biotech company, so we do full sequences in human genome and animal genome. And so we understand very clearly, working with scientists, renowned scientists today, so we knew right away that the new variants have a characteristic of the current COVID. What is that characteristic is the way that they latch on your wall, they have to latch into your wall first before they can actually multiply and create the bacteria cell in your body. And the new variant, they have same characteristic is they need something to latch on before they can do that. So the current vaccine protect you from both current virus, coronavirus, and the new variants on that aspect. Okay, we don't allow them to latch onto our wall. Now, after they latch on, of course, they have different effect. So when they latch on already, the new variant, whatever the effect that they have, the scientists have not find out yet. Because right now they already know, okay, if the new variant cannot latch on, then that's good. But they continue to do research to see what the impact after they latch on, the difference between different variants. So I continue to do research, but I have not received any data nor literature about the dangerous impact of the new variant after they latch on yet. So right now we all focus on the vaccine to make sure everybody have that protection. So regardless of variant or not, they hopefully they don't latch on. Now, what kind of efficacy for each of those genes to allow that layer to work properly as they claim? So from my understanding and the discussion among the scientific community, and data have submitted to the FDA, the Moderna vaccine claims 64% efficacy and very safe. That I believe because I personally take Moderna and I personally tell my family member to take Moderna because I did a lot of research on Moderna and I believe it's the most safe, the safest vaccine, and their technology, same with Pfizer. But the Pfizer efficacy is lower than Moderna because we have tested against each other in our lab, so we know. Now, Johnson & Johnson is a different technology. Their efficacy 50% as same as the China vaccine. The China vaccine is Sinovac have 50% efficacy. The 50% will not happen. And they did not disclose the side effect of the vaccine. So we don't have the information about the side effect. But what we do know is in the United States, that 3 or 4 times the CDC erupted stopped giving the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. There's still question to the answer. I have a very sad story to share with you. My nephew is a dentist, and his colleague is a dentist also, and for a Vietnamese young dentist. She took the Johnson & Johnson vaccine on Saturday, and Sunday she passed away. It's a blood clot on her brain. So of that said, the research, I say why. So their documentation that most of the blood clot in women in the United States before the pandemic is will happen every year, 1 or 100,000 women. But low blood clot, so they can always, go fix whatever in the emergency room. But because Johnson increased the number to 7 people in 1,000. So if you look from the statistic, it's 7 times increase, right? It's very good. I personally recommend people, especially when do not take Johnson & Johnson vaccine until you have to check out your blood. You have to make sure it's work with that. Now, I think the safest, most efficacy is Johnson Moderna and okay. So Johnson & Johnson have the same characteristic with you cannot pronounce that name, but AstraZeneca, something like that, that been given to in Europe, and the Switzerland put halt on that vaccine because they have same efficacy and same side effect with Johnson & Johnson. So with that information, people can make a choice. And some of my friends, I recommend to take it, they did not take it, and they wait for another vaccine. To me, the CDC and the FDA are looking into that they asked Johnson & Johnson for answer, but they can only claim. Johnson & Johnson come back and claim on a Baltimore factory with contamination. They did not tell the truth of the side effect on yet. So I hope one day that they will come out. But for now, it's safe to use Moderna and Pfizer, especially for us in the United States. Okay, Ted, that answer your first part question?
Thank you for that. I do see that at 11:30, which is what said we would be ending.
Yeah,
Acknowledge that I do have.
If you need to ask more questions,
we do have, I know has been waiting. For everybody else, I do respect your time. If you would like to wait, we're just gonna take the one last question because she has been waiting. And if you have any other questions, you reach out to us at the California PoorPeoplesCampaign.org, and we'll definitely move your question to the appropriate person. But again, thank you very much for your time. I'm going to take the last question from Ms. Paula Lance.
Still on mute.
You're still on mute, Paula.
I'm confused about the antibody test because if I heard Justin correctly, he was talking about a blood test. He talked about getting groups of people together and drawing the blood. And I'm assuming that what we're providing at the Solidarity Center is not a blood test.
Correct.
And so I'm not familiar with what PCR test is. So how does that, what is the efficacy of the test that the Solidarity Center is going to be providing for us to know whether or not the vaccination that we have had is working? And that question is for Justin.
Yes. Okay, let me answer that question. There are two tests. The PCR test is the snow swab. The snow swab PCR test is a real-time reaction chain test for COVID-19 positive or negative. That test has 99.99% efficacy. The gold standard, the most accurate COVID test on the planet today. Yeah.
So that's not an
antibody test. The
That's not an
neutralizing
antibody test. That's a
requires
COVID-19 test.
And the blood spin and do a complete diagnostic analytic through our lab procedure. It takes a long time to analyze for antibody specifically against the COVID. So those are two different tests. Now, what we offer is the COVID test is the same way. You can send the people come to the event or any place with the test kit. They can swipe. They can do their own test and put in the tube and film and send it back. I mean, we collect it and bring it to our lab. to perform the PCR test. In similar way, and neutralizing antibody test to check if their vaccine work or not, or in fact, if they don't take vaccine, is their body foreign enough to have that capability to neutralize antibody or not. If
And if it's still not clear to you, please.
Yeah.
And we can definitely clear it up.
Can I help? May I say something?
Antibody test. And the other one is the COVID testing that we're going to be doing at the Solidarity Center. So I do want to respect everybody's time. It is 11:35. We did go over 5 minutes. Just want to thank everybody for being here and listening to all of the resources and all of the speakers that we had today. And again, if you have any other questions, you either can speak, if you're NAACP, your president, Jeanette Royston. For anybody else that has any additional questions we were not able to cover, you can actually reach out to us at California at poorpeoplescampaign.org. And again, we'll go ahead and forward your information to the appropriate person to answer your question. So once again, thank you all for being here today. We appreciate you. And this is not, you will definitely be invited to come. Thank you all.
Rose, may I just speak quickly? If you're looking for the gift cards, would you all just, I put it in the chat already, the phone number.